On this episode, we're talking to Gerald Kippen, a lawyer who gives us some insight into recent changes to Thailand's work permit law.
So, if you're tired of half-truths and what-ifs about working in Thailand, you'll definitely learn something on this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, who has been trying to go back home to Canada since 2001, but is scared that I won't be able to get a decent mango and sticky rice there, so I just never leave.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 17 and a half years ago, got used to being taller than most people, and decided I didn't want to go back.
That reminds me of what our friend Jonathan said about being here. He wasn't only in Thailand am I tall, dark, and handsome.
There you go. That's right. That's exactly right.
All right, before we get started, we want to say a quick thank you, as usual, to one of our patrons, a man named Ray St. Peter, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Now, stick around after we're done talking about the updated work permit laws to hear some juicy gossip about Ray.
And before we start, a huge thanks to actually all of our patrons who support the show. For more info on how you can become a patron and get some cool swag and bonus content, just head to the support page on BangkokPodcast.com.
Yeah, and of course, one of the cool things our patrons get every week is an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode where we talk about all kinds of stuff. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about what some of our earliest memories of Bangkok are, our new Patreon video, which should be up at the end of this week, and the peculiar legalities or illegalities, depending on what side of the law you fall on, of filming video footage in Bangkok.
Yeah, especially video footage from drones. Drones are like the new thing, and
yeah,
you know, it's funny that I say new thing when we're about 5 years late. Like they were probably new about 5 years ago, but we're just catching up. So you want to be a patron? You should be a patron. We got some good stuff over there. Check it out.
We do. So on this episode, we have a really interesting guest by the name of Gerald Kippen from Dunsing Kippen, a law firm with offices in Bangkok and Phuket. Now, a few weeks ago, Gerald wrote an article that's been burning up the internets here in Thailand about changes to the work permit law. And if you've lived here for any amount of time, you know that these regulations are a constant pain in the ass for us foreigners trying to stay legal here. But these new changes make it a whole lot easier for us to work on the right side of the law, or at least they seem to. As we know, not everything in Thailand is what it seems.
No doubt.
So Gerald was nice enough to come on the show to walk us through these changes and give us some insight into what they mean for the average everyday Joe, just like Ed and I, where our names are not Joe. Anyway, here's my conversation with Gerald from Dunsing Kippen.
สถานีต่อไปเพลินจิต Next station เพลินจิต
Well, we're very happy to have on the show this week a guy by the name of Gerald Kippen. I remember meeting him way back in the day, my early Bangkok days running around, and he's a super decent dude. And it's really cool that our paths have crossed again. So, Gerald, welcome to the Bangkok Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Greg.
So you work for a law firm called Dunsing Kippen. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and if not, you can correct me. But can you tell us a little bit about your law firm?
Yeah, that's correct. Dunsing Kippen. It is my firm with my partner, Olaf Dunsing. We have two other foreign lawyers, another partner who's Japanese and American. And then we have 6 Thai lawyers. And we started our firm in 2010. And mainly what we do is pretty much everything that's related to foreign investment, corporate, commercial, real estate, tax, and obviously we do quite a bit of dispute resolution, litigation, and arbitration. I guess one thing I should say, and maybe preface our conversation here, one thing we don't specialize in other words, people don't come to us specifically for the service of work permits and visas. We do provide that for our clients, and of course that's something we should know about, and that's the articles that or the issues I think we're mostly talking about today. We keep an eye on that, of course, and we did write the post that we did because we didn't see that information was getting out there. which we thought was pretty important.
Right. Fair enough. Good to say that. But I think it's also fair to say that you're way more experienced with this than me or my co-host Ed are. And if us chuckleheads were rapping about this, it would just be a bunch of speculation and nothing more. So you're already ahead of the game in that regard. So the article that you were talking about, the first time I saw it, it came out about a week and a half ago, and it was on PhuketNews.com, and that linked back to your website where you wrote a blog, and the blog was titled "Thailand's New Work Permit Law Part 2: Any Work, Anywhere, for Anyone." Mm-hmm. And it raised a lot of eyebrows because the important quote and the big takeaway from this article was, let me quote you here. Quote, "As a consequence, any foreigner who has a work permit in Thailand may now work anywhere for anyone, including themselves, under any conditions and do any type of work that is not excluded by the official list."
Correct.
And as my co-host and I were talking about we talked a little bit about this on our bonus episode. Work permits have long been a pain in the ass for long-term expats here. They're expensive, they're complicated, they take a lot of time and paperwork and effort to get. But this seems to sort of bust things open a little bit. So just can you tell me what this change means for the average Joe working in Thailand?
Yeah, average Joe and myself, and it sounds like you. That's and if you, I guess I take a step back here. If you look, your quote, you honed right into obviously the meat or the core point there, and we tried to keep that blog really short because that is really what it's about.
Right.
But to understand, how that works out, we don't necessarily, unless you want to need to get into why that is the case, but it involves the other two laws before it, because there's some things that are being canceled, there's some things that are kept, right? But what it means for the average Joe, I would consider myself an average Joe, is that, in my 15 years of being here, when I wanted to go do something within my profession, which is advising legal clients in our firm, or before when I was working for somebody else or us, or what I do nowadays too is I often teach courses in arbitration and litigation.
Right.
I had to be looking over my shoulder and wondering, okay, if somebody shows up here, or if I was going to a meeting where I'm seeing opposing counsel and maybe they want to use as a tactical maneuver the fact that I'm outside of the bounds of my work permit because I'm not at my location of work, or maybe I'm doing something that isn't defined within my work permit's very narrow definition. I had to worry about that. I had to be concerned about that. Under the current law, that's not the case.
Interesting.
If you want to broaden it out beyond just you and me, Greg, a teacher, I mean, theoretically here, what we have here is that somebody is an English teacher here, and they're worried that they have they can teach English at this one site, and maybe they're working for a company, but they can't, they're worried about, and they have a problem if they go to their other site.
Right.
That's been removed. If they're, working at a restaurant, maybe they have two locations. Again, same kind of thing. So that, and maybe doing something different. Also, maybe if you wanted to do something for yourself, that's gone. Those prohibitions, for some reason, they liberalized it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, and now some of the excluded jobs you talked about, there's a list of, I don't know if I've heard of 30 or 50 or something like that. Agriculture, carpentry, making Thai musical instruments, architecture, tour guides, et cetera, et cetera. Well, let's use me, for example. I mean, I work in an office and I have a work permit for that office, and the address listed in the work permit is that office. So previously, that's the only office I was allowed to work at, doing the job that was listed for me there.
Correct.
But now, can I be a Grab driver? Can I open a hot dog stand on Silom? Can I open a store selling T-shirts?
As long as you have, what you have to have is a work permit that's accepted, right? And that will be and that your permission has been granted to do X, Y, Z for this employer. That means you have to have an acceptable employer. And then what the government has done is removed limitations for you to do any other work anywhere else, anytime. That is, again, not one of those specifically prohibited activities.
Right. That is an important distinction. So now you can't just come in and decide to work. The law says you have to have at least one valid work permit for one valid position at one valid company.
Right.
After that, any other job you want to do that's not on the prohibited list is fine.
Exactly. And for years and years, people would say, "Oh, you have a work permit, you can go do this," or "I have a permit," or "You have a permission." And for me too, when I have clients, new clients that are going through the process of investing here in Thailand, they're getting a permission, and that issue always comes up. Well, once I have my permit, and then I can go do this and that, and we always have to make it we used to have to make it very clear to them. No. You're not allowed to do that. You're only going to get this really limited scope. And it was always shocking to them. It was like, for instance, I'm not sure how it is in Canada, but in America, once you get what is the equivalent of work permission, a green card, you can do any work, right? As long as it's not illegal work.
Yeah. So in Thailand, it was quite restrictive. It was like being a prisoner and then getting exercise time, and the exercise yard is like an 8-foot square piece of cement. Like, okay, technically, yeah, I'm exercising, but it's not really freedom.
And you also gave a huge breadth of discretion, if we want to call it that, to authorities that wanted to abuse that discretion. It not only was the definition of work or what you were doing, your activity, but where you were doing it at the time. So maybe hopefully that's part of what they are doing. I have to say, as somebody who's lived here for this long, and also who's been in the profession that I have for this long, I too, and we've had a few comments. Did they make a mistake? It was one of the first things I said to my partner. Really? Because it's such a huge change.
I was over trolling around on Thai Visa today, which I try not to do too often. There seems to be a lot of skepticism here, and even my co-host and I talked about this on our bonus episode. We're like, this is awesome if it's true, but sort of, really, it doesn't seem to be in character with previous regulations.
Sure. What I would say in response to that was, number one, well, first of all, obviously, if we didn't believe it was true, we didn't. Again, this isn't our core practice. And we wouldn't put the reputation of our firm, and I'm not saying you're even questioning that at all, right? But we wouldn't do that simply to cause a stir. But the other thing is what we put in the article there's the roadmap. One only need download the English version of the the Alien Workers Act, which is now gone from 2008 or whatever it was, we say in the article. Decree number 1, which is also available in English from last year, and decree number 2. Those are all searchable, and then just see what we said. There's the roadmap. There's the legal analysis that you go through, and then it's very clear that's the conclusion that we come to.
Yeah, well, on a previous episode of the podcast, we were also talking a little bit about myself. I just got a digital work permit because I work for a BOI company. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are like, what? That's a thing? Mm-hmm. Including Thai officials, because I've heard several stories from my coworkers who have this new digital work permit where they go to the
It's like a driver's license, or no, it's on your phone, right?
It's an app on your phone, and you just open it up like any other app, and it shows all your information. And these guys are going to like get their driver's license renewed or apply for something for their condo or something, and they whip out this app, and the people look at it like, what the hell is this? This isn't real, you know? I mean, what you said about maybe this is just sort of a long-term strategy to modernize, I can believe that, because this work permit thing seems to be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and actually, within this same decree, in part 1 of our article, we mentioned that there were some changes there before we got into the issue that we're talking now here in part 2. But one of the things in there is you can also apply, I think we said electronically, because I think that's what the closest translation was in the Thai version. That is actually what's happened there. BOI is only that's the only place you can do it now, and actually have that's part of a result of these new decrees. And our understanding is the place that they're implementing it first, which makes sense, is for BOI folks, but the plan is for that to be for everybody.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see that. It's so much easier. It's just way less paperwork. It's way less rubber stamping, way less waste.
It's easier for them, not just for us. For us, it's a dream. But I mean, when I say them, I mean the government. Yeah,
well, they can update it or cancel it or activate it remotely, like just a couple of keys, right? It seems like a no-brainer.
I agree.
Well, it seems like things are moving in the right direction, and like I said, the overall reaction to this has sort of been met with skeptical
mix of skepticism and excitement. Yeah, exactly. I totally get that. mean, again, as somebody I go through the ringer every year, getting my visa renewed, getting my work permit, having to change my schedule. All I can say is that's our firm's legal opinion. It's out there.
Yeah.
Wait till somebody says that it's not the case. It's been a week, right? There were, like, on some of our social sites, there was, for example, one partner at a major firm, I won't mention the name, who I've met once before, and she mentioned, well, I'm going to check this with my legal team. Well, that was 8 days ago. I'm sure they checked. So I'm confident. And I have also seen and talked to some of, because I have, at this point, I know folks at almost all the major firms, and end up having interactions, friends and colleagues. And I've heard it from more than just us. I think it was as a result of the fact that to see this result, you have to look at all three. Now you have to do the drudgery of comparing this and that, and then see it, like have it show up like that, plus this, and then combining with that means, whoa. Because it's not it's not a decrease to, like what we said in our headline. Therefore, hey, foreigners, now you can work anywhere, anytime, as long as you have a work permit. It's not prohibited. There's nowhere in the section that says that. Right. You have to go through the mouse maze to see what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and also, let's reiterate as a caveat: none of what we said and talked about should be construed as legal advice.
Absolutely.
And these things are always a bit more complicated than they appear on the surface, especially in Thailand. So
totally.
We'll include a link to the Dunsink Kippen website on our blog and in our links. So head over there and dig into it a little bit and read through it. But it seems like, fingers crossed, this is a little bit of liberalization of one of the sort of banes of existence for many long-term foreigners in Thailand here. So,
and the other thing I would say too is, which you kind of touched on before, is but how is the person at the work permit office going to respond to this? Fair enough. I mean, that happens. That happens actually in my practice. That happens to us all the time, that the officials, even with the law that they're overseeing, don't get it. And it's certainly something major like this. I fully expect none of them have been instructed that this is the case now. So yes, I expect, assuming that the analysis that we've presented in our article there is correct, I fully expect there to be some headwind here for some time, for enough of the administrative apparatus and with regard to work permits in Thailand also fully understands that. So
yeah, well, I did read something really quickly again on Thai Visa the other day about how some officials in Chiang Mai were refusing visas or something to some people who were volunteering. I don't know all the details, but I mean, high level decisions like this take time to filter down in anywhere, but in Thailand as well. So I would imagine you'd get some quizzical looks and some pushback for a while, but eventually, if this holds, I think everyone will sort of come on board. Again, fingers crossed.
Absolutely.
Well, Gerald, thanks a lot, man. That was eye-opening and insightful, and again, not legal advice, but good to talk to someone who knows more about it than I do.
Sure, great. Thanks for having me on.
All right, take care, man.
สถานีต่อไปนานา Next station นานา
From the mouth of an expert. So it looks like things will be changing, and it's good to see that even in Thailand, which is sort of like very conservative and seems to love to hold on to, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, that even something as entrenched as these work permit laws can sort of, if not outright be completely rewritten, then at least they're starting to change. Change comes slowly, but at least it comes.
Agreed. There's some good news there, no doubt.
Yeah, well, thanks, Gerald, for coming on. That was really interesting, and hopefully he'll be back on again, because there's certainly lots to talk about the legalities of long-term living in Thailand. All right, let's get into Love, Loathe, or Leave, where one of us surprises the other with a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or hate so much that it makes us want to leave forever. And this week is my turn. So... Ed, have you ever been out at, say, a market or a temple fair or, just out and about, and you turn around and there's a guy standing there, and I call him the Thai Mr. T, because he's got about 50 pounds of amulets around his neck, of all different sizes, of all different shapes, just hanging off this guy's neck, pulling his spine towards the ground, bending his skeletal structure out of order. I kind of look at these guys and I think, dude, really? one not enough for you? do you find this silly and annoying, or do you find it sort of like a charming cultural quirk?
I do think I know what you're talking about. My university happens to be right next to, I think, the biggest amulet market in Bangkok, or it's just on the map. It's just called the Amulet Market. I'm near Ta Maharat, which has tons of amulet shops and stuff. And obviously, I know they're popular, and I think a lot of different Thai people might have one amulet or so. But you're right. Occasionally, you just encounter these guys like wearing many amulets. Like, I don't know if I don't think it's a fashion statement, right? It must be. It must be like that. What does that mean? Does it mean that they're like true believers?
Yeah. The only thing I can think is that it's like, if one is good, 75 must be way better.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why, like, certain people, but it always seems to be some overweight dude, slovenly looking dude that's got like a ton of these amulets. I'm gonna go charming. You know, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't make. I don't get it. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if it's like, could it be a person who's recently had a lot of bad luck, so they've, that they're just piling up on the amulets? I'm not sure what's going on there.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it's the Thai equivalent of like when the night before a big test, religious people in the West would be on their knees with their hands clasped in front of the bed every night. Please, Lord, let me, So, we're not judging. If you want to do that, that's fine. But yeah, I don't think it makes much sense. But at the same time, I think it's charming. Therefore, it has to fall into the love category. I think it's an interesting, quirky little element of Thai society that you can't loathe. So we're not going to leave. So
yes,
love.
I agree.
Right. Although I will say, if you ever meet up with me and I'm wearing more than, say, 3 amulets, you could say something to me.
No doubt about that. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Ray for lending us his support at the show shout out level. And Greg, what did you find out about Ray?
Yeah, well, as it turns out, Ray lives in Florida, United States of America, and he loves to travel. He's been to Thailand twice, which isn't a big deal for him because he's obviously used to being uncomfortably hot and sticky all the time. So in our email exchange back and forth, Ray said he was recently in Thailand, Cambodia, and Japan with a bunch of friends, which sounds like a great trip. But I did some digging around, and I found some receipts from his trip. Ed, all this stuff is out there on the internet,
Wow, I see.
Yeah, and I found something strange about this trip that Ray went on. He paid for everything.
Really?
All on his dime.
Wow.
Yeah. And I found that a little bit curious. So I did some more digging, and guess what? Ray is loaded. And you know why?
I have no idea why.
He's a songwriter, and his biggest hit is a song that he wrote about himself, Ray of Light by Madonna.
For real? Like, that's the actual Ray who supports our show?
He is the Ray of Light to the Bangkok podcast. So good on you, Ray. Keep cranking out those hits, my friend, and we'll let you buy us a beer on your next trip to Thailand. We're looking forward to that.
Absolutely, Ray. Ray, you owe us one. All right, before we wrap up, I'd like to give a special thanks to all of our patrons. As you know, we don't run ads or have sponsors for the show. It actually matters a lot to us, and we really do appreciate the support we get from our patrons. And if you want to get in touch with us, we are at Bangkok Podcast on Facebook and Twitter, or you can send us a message via the contact form on BangkokPodcast.com, where we will try and get back to you sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you can also find us on the Line app, where we post each episode and also carry on conversations with our listeners. You can also reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I'm BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, everyone. We appreciate it, and we'll see you back here next week. Take care. Hey guys, if you're one of the people that listens to the little tag at the end of the show, I apologize, but I am editing this at a Starbucks right now and don't have access to my regular library of outtakes. However, if it makes you feel any better, I just paid 180 baht for a Starbucks Nitro cold brew, and God help me, I love it.